There is a massive hidden truth about narcissists that almost no one sees, and once you finally grasp it, the way you view their behavior will change forever. When you look at a narcissist, you see someone who appears completely bulletproof. They walk into a room oozing an unshakable confidence, carrying an effortless charm that draws people in, and projecting a suffocating sense of superiority that makes everyone else feel small. It is incredibly easy to look at that mask and believe they have it all figured out. Most people genuinely believe that narcissists are completely happy with who they are, that they thoroughly enjoy the pain they inflict on others, and that they live in a permanent state of satisfaction, totally untouched by guilt, self-doubt, or emptiness. We tend to view them as these unstoppable, cold-blooded emotional monsters who win at life while leaving everyone else broken in their wake. But the deeper psychological reality is far more disturbing, far more tragic, and infinitely more revealing than the flawless surface they show to the world. The truth is, the narcissist is not the untouchable, powerful figure the world believes them to be. Behind closed doors, away from the audience, they are actually one of the most intensely tormented human beings you will ever encounter. Their entire existence is defined by a quiet, relentless psychological agony that never stops whispering inside their own minds. This internal torment is so deeply buried, so meticulously camouflaged, that even the people who live with them, love them, and interact with them every single day have absolutely no clue it is there. You aren't dealing with a person who feels genuinely superior. You are dealing with someone who is constantly running for their psychological life from an internal monster they cannot defeat. If you want to break the spell they cast, stop being confused by their mind games, and understand human nature at a level most people never reach, hit the subscribe button right now. Every single video on this channel is built to give you the exact, raw, unfiltered insight you need to decode hidden manipulation, protect your peace, and change how you look at relationships and power dynamics forever. Subscribe right now, because what we are about to uncover next will only make sense to those who are truly ready to stop falling for appearances and look at the brutal reality beneath the surface. Once you look beneath that surface, you immediately run into the actual engine that drives all narcissistic behavior, a chronic, gnawing emptiness that lives at the exact center of their identity. This is the first and most defining sign of their deep internal suffering, and it is almost completely invisible to the outside world. To the casual observer, a narcissist looks like they are overflowing with self-importance, totally drenched in self-admiration, and entirely full of themselves. But if you could step inside their mind, you would see that the opposite is true. Internally, there is a completely hollow space, a massive black hole where a healthy, stable sense of self should be. They don't actually have a real identity. This emptiness isn't something they feel every now and then when they have a bad day, nor is it triggered by a specific stressful situation. It is a permanent, agonizing background noise that follows them into every single room they walk into, every relationship they build, and every milestone they achieve. It is a terrifying void that never goes away. They feel this void most acutely in the quiet moments. They feel it the exact second the applause fades, the crowd leaves, and the cameras turn off. The moment no one is actively looking at them, validating them, or reflecting back the grand, larger-than-life image they have manufactured. The emptiness rushes back in like a tidal wave. And because facing that internal nothingness is completely unbearable, because it feels like actual psychological death, they spend every waking second of their lives trying to fill that hole from the outside world. They don't chase attention because they just love being the center of the room. They chase it because without your attention, they literally feel like they are starting to disappear inside themselves. They don't pursue status and prestige because it brings them genuine joy. They pursue it because the high of a new achievement temporarily numbs the pain of the void. They demand your absolute admiration, not because they truly believe they deserve it, but because the very moment that admiration stops, the distraction ends, and they are forced to look at the terrifying emptiness underneath. This is the exact reason why a narcissist can never truly rest, and why being around them can feel so incredibly exhausting. Stillness is their ultimate enemy. Solitude is their worst possible punishment. Quiet moments are dangerous to a narcissist because silence strips away the distractions and exposes exactly what their grandiosity was designed to hide. If you pay close attention, you will notice that they absolutely refuse to allow stillness into their lives. They will fill every single silence with loud noise, every moment of uncertainty with massive, arrogant declarations, and every empty hour on their calendar with a new conquest, a new manufactured drama, or a brand new audience. They aren't actually living their lives or enjoying their success. They are running a non-stop marathon of escape. And the entity they are desperately trying to outrun every single day is the unbearable, suffocating experience of simply being alone with themselves, completely unmasked, undefended, and totally undefined. The second major sign of deep narcissistic suffering is a chronic, relentless dissatisfaction with absolutely everything they have, everything they achieve, and everyone they ever cross paths with. To the outside world, this constant restlessness is easily misinterpreted. It looks like a powerful drive, a textbook definition of high standards, or the unstoppable ambition of a high achiever who simply refuses to settle for mediocrity. But when you strip away that impressive exterior, you find a far more painful reality. The narcissist suffers from a total psychological incapacity to feel sustained fulfillment. They are literally broken inside in a way that prevents them from holding on to happiness. The absolute second they finally obtain something they spent months or years chasing, its value completely collapses in their hands. The new, thrilling relationship that felt like a fairy tale suddenly becomes boring and suffocating. The monumental career achievement that was supposed to change everything instantly feels empty and meaningless. The person they completely idealized and placed on a pedestal just weeks ago suddenly becomes ordinary, deeply flawed, and wildly disappointing. This tragic cycle doesn't happen because the world keeps failing them or because they just have bad luck. It happens because their internal psychological architecture is built in a way that is fundamentally incapable of holding on to satisfaction. True fulfillment isn't about what you acquire. It requires an internal ability to feel safe, to be emotionally grounded, and to be deeply connected to your own reality. Because the narcissist lacks every single one of these internal capacities, they are trapped in a permanent state of psychological starvation. They live their entire lives frantically wanting more, needing more, and demanding more, while being completely unable to actually taste or enjoy what they already have. It is one of the cruelest forms of mental torture a person can experience because it masquerades as motivation, when in reality, it is a lifelong hunger that no amount of money, fame, success, or validation can ever feed. They look at their greatest accomplishments and feel dead inside. They look at the people who love them and feel absolutely nothing. Instead of facing the terrifying truth that the emptiness is coming from within, they turn outward and blame the rest of the world for failing to make them happy. They convince themselves that the next trophy, the next relationship, or the next group of adoring fans will finally be the cure. But it never is, because you can never pour enough water into a cup that has no bottom. This never-ending hunger leads directly into the third sign of their hidden torment, the constant, crushing exhaustion of maintaining the false self. Every single narcissist constructs an artificial image, a highly curated version of themselves that is vastly more powerful, attractive, intelligent, and special than who they actually believe they are on the inside. You need to understand that this fake persona is not just a casual costume they put on in the morning and take off at night. It is a rigid, heavy psychological fortress that they are forced to defend every single second of every single day. And the sheer amount of mental energy required to keep this illusion alive is staggering. Imagine living your entire life as an intense, high-stakes theatrical performance where you can never, ever break character. Imagine the constant low-level panic of knowing deep down that if the audience glimpses even a fraction of the real, flawed human being underneath, the entire massive construction will instantly collapse into dust. This is the invisible weight the narcissist carries in total silence. Because they are terrified of being exposed, their minds are always working on overdrive. They are constantly calculating how others perceive them, meticulously rehearsing their reactions ahead of time, and scanning every casual interaction for hidden threats to their image. They cannot afford to let anyone truly know them, because to be truly known means being deeply seen, and being seen means facing the exact parts of themselves they have spent a lifetime running away from. This profound, non-stop exhaustion is exactly why narcissists are so incredibly volatile. It triggers their sudden, unpredictable bursts of rage, their constant irritability, and their obsessive need to control everyone around them. People in their lives are often left completely baffled as to why such seemingly powerful, successful individuals are so incredibly fragile, reactive, and easily wounded by the tiniest piece of criticism. The answer is simple. They aren't just defending a big ego, they are desperately fighting to protect the only psychological structure that keeps them from completely falling apart. They are not arrogant because they actually feel superior to you. They are arrogant because they cannot survive the feeling of being ordinary. Their grandiosity is a desperate, exhausting defense mechanism for a self that never fully formed. When you challenge their narrative or call them out, they don't see it as a minor disagreement. They view it as a direct threat to their survival, and they will strike back with absolute cruelty just to keep their mask intact. If these exact patterns are perfectly describing the confusing, toxic behaviors you have witnessed in someone close to you, then you need to make sure you stay connected to this channel. Take a second to subscribe and turn on your notifications right now to join a community of people who are learning to decode human behavior with absolute precision and psychological honesty. The more you understand these hidden internal dynamics, the more impossible it becomes for anyone to manipulate, gaslight, or destabilize you ever again. True knowledge of the mind is your absolute best protection, and once you see the exhaustion behind the mask, they lose their power over you completely. The fourth profound sign of deep narcissistic suffering is an absolute, localized terror of irrelevance. Beneath the carefully curated armor of superiority and the loud declarations of being better than everyone else, there is a deep, agonizing dread of being forgotten, overlooked, or rendered ordinary. For the average person, the idea of being just normal or average might be a little uncomfortable, but it is entirely tolerable and a part of everyday life. For the narcissist, however, being average is the exact equivalent of psychological death. Because their entire identity has been built exclusively on the idea that they are special, chosen, and uniquely exceptional, the mere possibility of being unremarkable feels like a threat to their actual existence. This is the hidden reason why they absolutely cannot stand losing the spotlight, even for a single second. It explains why they will subtly or overtly sabotage anyone around them who dares to outshine them, and why they are psychologically incapable of genuinely celebrating another person's success. To the narcissist, someone else winning doesn't just mean that person did well. It means they themselves have been diminished, pushed into the shadows, and made irrelevant. This deep-seated terror is precisely why the natural process of aging is uniquely brutal and devastating for a narcissist. As time goes on, it relentlessly strips away many of the sharp external markers they spent their whole lives relying on to feel superior. Their physical beauty begins to fade, their professional power shifts to others, and their cultural relevance is constantly challenged by a younger, newer, and more vibrant generation. As these external sources of nonstop validation begin to dry up and dissolve, the suffering they have been frantically outrunning their entire lives finally catches up to them. Because they have absolutely no stable internal foundation to fall back on, aging narcissists frequently transform into incredibly bitter, deeply controlling, and highly paranoid individuals. They watch the world stop responding to them the way it used to. They watch the external validation vanish, and they are left completely panicked by the ultimate unspoken terror that has haunted them since day one, the terrifying realization that if they are not extraordinary, they are absolutely nothing at all. This panic feeds directly into the fifth sign of their hidden torment, which is arguably the most tragic: their total, absolute inability to experience genuine emotional intimacy. A narcissist can be incredibly skilled at accumulating people. They can have multiple romantic partners, a large family, endless admirers, and thousands of social media followers, but they can never truly let a single human being inside their world. Real connection requires vulnerability, trust, and the willingness to expose the fragile, wounded child hidden deep beneath the grandiose adult mask. Because the narcissist is completely incapable of doing this, they live their entire lives in a state of permanent, crushing emotional isolation, even when they are physically surrounded by people who genuinely care about them. This is a profound level of loneliness that no amount of public attention can ever cure, and a deep emotional hunger that no relationship can ever satisfy. Instead of building a real bond, they mistake control for closeness, admiration for love, and possession for partnership. They reach out for human connection using the only tools they know: seduction, manipulation, and manufactured dependency. But because these tools are transactional, every single relationship eventually leaves them feeling completely empty and abandoned. Rather than confronting the reality of their internal psychological structure, they inevitably turn around and blame their partner for the failure. They spend their entire lives pressing their face against the glass, looking in on the warmth of real intimacy, but never being able to actually step inside and feel it. They are completely blind to the fact that the freezing cold they feel isn't because the world is denying them love, but because of the heavy, locked door inside their own psyche that they stubbornly refuse to open. Understanding this deep internal suffering does not excuse a single piece of the damage narcissists cause, nor does it erase the absolute chaos and pain they inflict on the people around them. But grasping this reality does something completely revolutionary for you. It entirely dismantles the myth that these people are powerful, invincible, or somehow winning at life. It breaks the psychological spell they cast over your mind, completely dissolves the fear they once inspired in you, and allows you to finally see them for what they truly are. They are not grand puppet masters controlling the world. They are deeply wounded human beings, trapped inside a suffocating, lifelong psychological prison of their own making. When you stop looking at them through the lens of their manufactured perfection and start seeing the bars of the cage they live in, their power over you completely vanishes. The absolute fragility of this prison becomes terrifyingly clear during what psychologists call the final narcissistic collapse. This is what happens when the fragile mask they have spent decades building finally cracks beyond repair. When their adoring audience completely disappears, when public exposure becomes absolutely inevitable, or when sudden abandonment strips away their very last layer of external protection, what emerges from underneath is not a strong, cold villain. It is a violent, chaotic, psychological disintegration. Without a crowd to validate them, they fall into a pit of deep, nameless depression, explosive and unregulated rage, and an unfaceable, toxic shame that burns through their psyche. They aren't throwing a tantrum because they didn't get their way. They are experiencing the literal death of the fake identity they built their entire life upon. They spend every single waking hour running a frantic, lifelong marathon away from the simplest, most fundamental human experience, the basic, messy reality of being a real, imperfect, and vulnerable human being. If this deep dive has finally given you the exact language for things you have felt in your gut, but could never quite explain to others, take a single second to subscribe, like this video, and leave a comment below sharing your own experience. Your personal awareness is your absolute ultimate shield against mind games, and your deep understanding is where your true power lives. The next time you encounter someone whose confidence seems just a little too loud, whose superiority feels deeply rehearsed, and whose need for nonstop admiration seems desperate, you will no longer be fooled. You will look past the noise and remember the massive, gnawing emptiness they cannot fill, the crushing exhaustion of the false identity they have to perform every single day, and the absolute terror of irrelevance that they can never outrun. You will finally possess the clarity to see that what looks like absolute power on the outside is nothing more than a quiet, tragic, lifelong unraveling on the inside.